This hearing will now be reconvened, and let me thank all of you for your patience. I thought I would acknowledge the ranking member for his both his diligence and his support for the product in his district. He has wanted to emphasize the bipartisanship of this particular subcommittee, and you will see it as we go forward. These are Peeps marshmallow chicks that he's graced the chairwoman with. It will suggest to you that if we do not see you before the holidays are approaching, we wish you wonderfully blessed holidays. And if someone starts failing physically, we will be willing to share one of the marshmallow chicks with you. Thank you, Mr. Dent.
Madam Chair, you're most welcome, and I'd be happy to make sure that we provided the chairman of the full committee some Easter Peeps as well. For when he has a little, when he needs a little sugar.
He's on the agricultural committee. I think he might take great interest in this.
The name of the company is Just Born, Bethlehem,
oh my
Pennsylvania.
Goodness.
There you go.
Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Dent. I welcome our second panel of witnesses. Our first witness is Mr. Andre Johnson, who is responsible for strategic direction as well as financial and overall management of FlightScan. FlightScan, a California-based company, is a leader in the development and deployment of custom-driven technology, and as well, it is a company that has evidenced its interest in the area that we're discussing. These solutions for the freight and logistics industry are the basis of the custom-driven technology solutions that this company is engaged in. Mr. Johnson has practical knowledge and experience in all sizes of business, from entrepreneurial to Fortune 100 companies. Welcome, Mr. Johnson. Our second witness is Mr. Jack Boysen, who recently retired as the head of Continental Airlines Cargo after an auspicious 14-year career leading global operations, sales, marketing, customer service, and postal affairs. He continues his role as the chairman of the International Air Cargo Association. Mr. Boysen has spent more than 40 years in the airline industry, handling positions of increasing stature and responsibility. He served Houston-based Continental as vice president of the cargo division since 1994, and I will not be biased toward Mr. Boysen because of his former affiliation with my hometown airline. But thank you and welcome, Mr. Boysen. Our third witness is Mr. Brandon Freed. Mr. Freed was appointed to serve as the executive director of the Air Forwarders Association in November 2005. Mr. Freed has more than 25 years of experience in the air freight industry. He started his career as a sales representative in Los Angeles and then moved to Washington, D.C., where he founded, owned, and operated the Washington office of ADCOM Worldwide, a global freight forwarder specializing in time-definite air cargo transportation. Our fourth witness, and we welcome you as well, Mr. Freed, to the panel. Our fourth witness is Mr. James May, President and CEO of the Air Transport Association of America, the nation's oldest and largest air trade association. He joined ATA in February 2003, has led the association through an especially challenging time in its history. Prior to joining ATA, Mr. May served as an executive vice president of the National Association of Broadcasters, vice president for public affairs for the Coca-Cola Bottling Company of New York, and directed government relations for PepsiCo, and served as Vice President for Public Affairs for the Grocery Manufacturers of America. We welcome you, Mr. May. Without objection, the witness's full statements will be inserted in the record. I now ask each witness to summarize his statement for 5 minutes, beginning with Mr. Johnson. Welcome, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Andre Johnson, the CEO of FreightScan. We're a company that provides innovative technology solutions for transportation companies. FreightScan is a trustee member of the International Air Cargo Association, members of the Air Forwarders Association also. To Chairwoman Jackson Lee, Ranking Member Dent, and members of this distinguished subcommittee, let me extend my sincere appreciation and gratitude for you inviting me to provide this testimony this afternoon. And Chairman Thompson, thank you for coming also. I'm here to speak on behalf of the small entrepreneurial companies that are at the forefront of developing new technology to solve problems for both the private and public sector. Can we secure American skies? I believe we can, and the story of FreightScan illustrates how small companies can play a significant role meeting the air cargo screening requirements mandated by Congress in the 9/11 Act. FreightScan was formed several years ago with a mission to offer business solutions for the freight industry with initial focus on air cargo. The first problem we set out to solve was how to automatically capture dimensions and images of cargo without disrupting workflow. Solving this problem would enable air carriers to accurately charge for large, lightweight shipments, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in profits. FreightScan developed and deployed a solution, and in late 2000, we introduced the FS100. As our team traveled around the world promoting the FS100, we kept hearing the same question. If this technology can capture dimensions and images, can we use it to screen cargo? FreightScan has always taken great pride in being customer-focused, and we committed to developing a screening solution that would not slow the flow of commerce. The result is Cargo Vision, a system which will detect potential threat objects in cargo during the standard acceptance process for shipments. Our next step was to get Cargo Vision validated and tested for inclusion on the Qualified Product List, or QPL. Our initial entree to the QPL process was frustrating. The roadmap to presenting our technology was not clear, and we couldn't get specifications for what threats we had to detect or various other critical pieces of information we needed to complete our development. We fully support and understand the need to protect sensitive information. However, a defined QPL process without classified data would have accelerated our ability to get details about our technology to TSA for evaluation. We could not afford any more delays, so we eventually validated the technology internally and presented the information to the TSA in the hopes it was a format that they could accept. That said, let me be clear. This is in no way a criticism or indictment of the TSA and its related agencies. Our initial point of contact at TSA made it clear the agency was besieged by companies large and small claiming to have solutions. We always believed that the TSA wanted to find a screening solution as much as we wanted to deliver one. The proof of the TSA's commitment to finding and validating potential solutions for 100% screening can be proven where we are today. Just a few short weeks after we convinced the TSA that we have a potentially viable solution, the pace has picked up significantly. Since then, we have had a number of positive constructing calls and emails with the TSA and the TSL lab in Atlantic City, and we're finalizing a cooperative research and development agreement to test and validate our technology. There are many positive outcomes for FreightScan's journey. We were able to obtain private funding and develop a screening solution in record time without burdening the U.S. government for resources or funding. We have demonstrated the solution in industry events, and there are several companies waiting to implement Cargo Vision immediately after being added to the QPL. We have hired 20 additional employees in the last 12 months, in spite of the current economic downturn, all of whom enjoy a safe working environment, full health insurance for them and their families, and many other benefits. Securing American skies is a difficult task, and therefore the ability to validate related technology is also very difficult. My hope is that FreightScan's story will inspire other small companies and also encourage the hardworking men and women at TSA to make the QPL process transparent for both large and small companies. This will encourage others to attempt the demanding but important duty of securing America. I understand that TSA is working on this, and we applaud them for their efforts. In conclusion, let me thank industry leaders like Jack Boyson and Brandon Freed, and also the TSA leadership for their encouragement and communication. FreightScan is one example of a company that had the determination to navigate the very challenging process. The reward is a working partnership with the TSA that will certainly contribute to everyone's goal of securing American skies. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear for you today. It would be my honor to return before this distinguished subcommittee before the August recess. And it is my hope I will be able to report that our solution is in use, as I believe Cargo Vision can make a significant contribution to meeting the August 2010 deadline for screening 100% of cargo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your testimony. I now recognize Mr. Boyson to summarize his statement for 5 minutes.
Chairman Jackson-Lee, Ranking Member Dent, Chairman Thompson, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, it is my pleasure to testify today on behalf of the International Air Cargo Association, or TIACA, which I serve as chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to present our views on one of the most important issues facing the air cargo sector, the screening mandates established by the so-called 9/11 Act. First, allow me to introduce TIACA. We represent all major segments of the air cargo supply chain, including airlines, forwarders, airports, ground handlers, all cargo carriers, road carriers, customs brokers, third-party logistics companies, integrators, shippers, and aircraft manufacturers. Because of the diversity of our membership, TIACA members are affected by all of TSA's security protocols. Our members are committed to ensuring the safety and security of air cargo while maintaining the viability of the air cargo supply system. In assessing current and future air cargo screening and the question of whether we can secure America's skies, it is important to understand that it is not possible to design a one-size-fits-all approach to air cargo security. Operating realities are different for each segment of the industry, and security policies need to take these distinctions into account. TIACA commends TSA for its sensitivity to this fact. TSA has determined that because of the realities of the air cargo supply chain, the best way to implement the 9/11 air cargo screening mandates is to spread the screening responsibilities throughout the supply chain via the Certified Cargo Screening Program, or CCSP. TIACA agrees with this approach. We do not believe that screening can be the sole responsibility of the airlines, nor do we support the efforts of some entities to federalize all air cargo screening. We believe federalization of airline-only screening would unduly crowd this function onto airport grounds, potentially creating significant bottlenecks, and would impose a one-size-fits-all approach to air cargo screening. While this might work in certain locales, it would likely produce commercial gridlock at many U.S. airports. The flexibility allowed under CCSP is a better fit with the diverse needs of the air cargo supply chain. While TIACA supports the general concept of CCSP, we have several concerns about implementation of the air cargo screening mandates, and I'd like to highlight a few of them in my testimony today. First, TIACA is concerned about the costs likely to be incurred by its members due to the new screening obligations. Those companies that become certified screeners will need to acquire costly equipment, and there will be other costs incurred as well, including facility security improvements, training, etc. We hope the U.S. Congress can consider providing some relief to these companies, perhaps through tax incentives. Second, we are quite concerned that much of the equipment currently certified for use is most appropriate for the passenger screening environment and not to the air cargo environment, where palletized or other consolidated shipments are the norm. We believe TSA should expedite this review of technologies geared toward the air cargo environment. Third, we are unclear on how TSA will be verifying compliance with the February 2009 and August 2010 screening standards and how potential stoppages due to noncompliance will be handled. Fourth, there is confusion within the air cargo sector about how the air cargo screening standards will be applied to flights originating from foreign airports. At this point, we do not know to the extent which foreign security protocols may have to change to meet the August 2010 100% screening standard, or what the impact might be on airlines, forwarders, shippers, and others. Fifth, TIACA is also concerned that there is occasionally a breakdown between TSA headquarters' interpretation of policy and the actions that are taken by inspectors in the field. Sixth, TIACA believes the Aviation Security Advisory Committee, known as ASAC, and its vital air cargo working group should be resuscitated as quickly as possible. We believe both would serve as vital conduits for industry-government discussion of the implementation issues as we move towards the 100% air cargo screening. Seventh, TIACA believes it is essential that the Department of Homeland Security better leverage the security programs of TSA and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, with a view towards increasing efficiency and eliminating redundancies. In summary, many challenges remain as we move towards August 2010 and the 100% air cargo screening mandate. TIACA commends the subcommittee for its strong leadership on this issue and hopes to continue working with you and with TSA to address these challenges and ensure viable implementation of the new air cargo screening standards and the security of America's skies. I thank you again for the opportunity to testify before you today.
Testimony, Mr. Boysen. I now recognize Mr. Freed to summarize his statement for 5 minutes.
Chairman Jackson Lee, Ranking Member Dent, Chairman Thompson, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before the House Committee on Homeland Security to discuss the challenges in meeting the first screening deadline, as well as the challenges we anticipate with the next 50%. As you are aware, the air freight industry has been working hard to meet the 100% passenger air cargo screening mandate. The Air Forwarders Association is committed to facilitating compliance and remains confident that the 100% benchmark will be met. We urge Congress and the TSA to maintain the CCSP against calls for federalization, provide funding mechanisms for participants to reduce the barrier to participation, and resist any further moves away from a risk-based approach to cargo security. More than a quarter of the facilities currently certified to screen cargo are Air Forwarders Association members. It seems that for the vast majority of the industry, reaching the 50% benchmark has not been particularly problematic. While the economic environment has had the effect of lowering cargo volume, remarkable progress made by TSA, forwarders, air carriers, and shippers deserves most of the credit. The ease of attaining the first portion of the screening mandate should be both a sign of encouragement and caution. Let me outline the remaining challenges with the remainder of my time. Last year, I had the privilege of addressing this subcommittee and outlined the concerns forwarders have about meeting the 100% mandate. Unfortunately, some of the more serious issues have yet to be resolved. The following three elements need to be resolved in order for CCSP to be a viable security program. Number one, the appropriation and availability of additional federal funding or incentives for eligible participants. Two, the encouragement of all entities involved in the supply chain as full participants in the act of screening. And three, the availability of efficient and cost-effective solutions to screening for all TSA-certified indirect air carriers and other qualified participants. In the absence of certified technology, the focus will be on examining pallets and containers. Each pallet or unit load device contains nearly 200 pieces of varying size, shape, and commodities. The space and time involved in breaking up cargo poses an increased level of risk of theft or tampering, as idle cargo is a security concern. The Air Forwarders Association has been working with carriers, shippers, and forwarders to ensure that there are many options available to forwarders of all sizes. As such, we believe that market competition and innovation, rather than a TSA screening operation at each airport facility, is the best way to provide efficient and effective options for all in the supply chain. Encouraging TSA screening to the maximum extent possible removes the supply chain's experience and problem-solving skills for a system with delays, higher costs, and less accountability. We urge TSA to continue to work with their Science and Technology Office as well as vendors to identify, test, and approve equipment that can effectively and efficiently screen palletized cargo. In the absence of that, we urge Congress to allocate additional funds for the K-9 program. Even as advancements are made with technology, the significant amount of capital required to purchase technology is a barrier for participation. Forwarders participating in CCSP must purchase technology for which the cost may range from $50,000 to $500,000 per facility, a price tag that cannot be met by many forwarders, particularly smaller forwarding businesses. As a result, they may face market disadvantages and longer lines at the air carrier if alternate options are not available. This lost revenue in the current economic environment could force forwarders out of business. For those in the pilot program, this need was addressed by a TSA-funded grant. We ask Congress and TSA to provide funding to ensure the thousands of jobs in the air freight industry are not lost and the American economy does not face more harm due to delay and market shrinkage. Finally, as we face the future, it is critical to look back on the mission of the Department of Homeland Security and TSA, which is not only to secure the nation's borders, but also to maintain an efficient flow of commerce. I agree that aviation security is critically important, but we must not abandon all consideration of international trade, economic security, and our supply chain, particularly in these troubled times. For that reason, the Air Forwarders Association has been working with the Safe Commerce Coalition to assess the most effective way to secure cargo for the future. Noted experts, including the General Accounting Office, have stated that abandoning a risk-based security program may actually make the nation less safe. Forwarders know it is an unwise use of finite resources to treat each piece of cargo as if it has the same threat level. The industry has already demonstrated its willingness to comply with the law and will continue. However, without a vigilant eye on the actual impact of our actions, I fear we may have achieved a mandate without achieving its goals. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and address this important topic and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Freed, for your testimony. And now recognize Mr. May to summarize his statement for 5 minutes.
Madam Chairwoman, it's a pleasure to be here. I will truly summarize my statement for you. Number one, we're pleased to announce that we have met the initial target of 50% across our membership. Number two, by definition, some of our carriers are narrow-body carriers exclusively, so they're already at 100% of the cargo they're carrying. We recognize that getting to that 100% target for all cargo, for all passenger aircraft is going to be a real challenge. The challenge is that we're going to wide bodies, and has been stated here already, going to wide bodies means that we're going to have palletized loads. Why is that a problem? One, we don't have current technology, can't handle big portal. We may have some, Mr. Johnson's technology may prove out to be the exception to the rule. Number two, we've got a lot of shippers, in particular those that have high-value products, that are not interested in having us tear those palletized loads down. There could be as many as 200 individual pieces. It takes an average of 75 minutes to tear down and repack, and that doesn't include the screening time. So what do? We rely on dogs. I would suggest to Mr. DeFazio, as I will tomorrow, that his cherry problem will probably be solved by dogs because they are the least intrusive, least expensive, most efficient explosives detecting technology available to us today. We will work very hard to make the full 100% target. We have every reason to think it can be done, but we know that there are 3 or 4 things that need to happen. One, we have to have the continuing cooperation between our friends in the freight forwarder community, the TSA, and ourselves. Number 2, we have to rely on upstream checking, which is part of the CCSP program that you've heard a lot about today already. It's critical for all of us that that work effectively. 3, because it is a very expensive proposition, the committee and the Congress needs to look at ways to help offset those expensive costs for our friends that are doing that screening upstream for us. And finally, you really need to think hard about providing the funding to further expand canine technology. As I said a minute ago, I've told Chairman Thompson this a number of times, it is simply the single best solution to be used from a cost perspective, a coverage perspective, speed, and all the other principal elements. I am delighted to be here to answer your questions. Thank you for your time.
Let me thank you very much for your testimony, and I will at this time yield myself 5 minutes. As I do so, I would like to remind each member that he or she will have 5 minutes to question the panel, and I will begin. Mr. Johnson, why don't you tell us how long you began, how long ago, how long a period of time did you begin this process of trying to reach DHS and thinking that you had a contribution to make with respect to air cargo security?
We originally contacted TSA about May of 2006.
So technically, we can say 3 years.
Yeah.
Would you give us an abbreviated recitation of what that encounter was like and how you have been processed or engaging since that time?
Well, in the beginning, it was a matter of just trying to explain, or what are we trying to solve? As engineers and as small companies, we have to decide what's the problem to solve and the best way to solve it first. And we heard from what the industry had and what they wanted to know. We were curious on what the TSA side of it was, and we just couldn't get the answers in the beginning all the way until 2007 when we officially met with the TSA here in Washington about what can be done. We wrote a proposal, an unsolicited proposal at the time, asking for release the technology, what do we have to find, and that took about 5 months. We heard a resounding not interested at that time.
Let me stop you. So you sort of followed regular order. You got your materials in, or your research, or your proposal in, and you were doing this in the backdrop of understanding that we had these deadlines. Were you aware as a business person that we had a 2009 and 2010 deadline?
Absolutely.
So you saw the sense of urgency.
We saw it as a sense of urgency, and with a mandate like that, we just want a chance to compete. never said we're the best solution or the only solution, but we felt that there might.
You're a small business, but you might also be counted as a minority business?
Yes.
And do you think, without a self-serving comment, that if the technology that you offered, or maybe there were some competitors of yours, but if they had been processed, would we have been further along with the issues that we're addressing today, about 50% and then at 100% by 2010?
I think we'd be further along, and secondarily, I think if the process is defined, it makes it easier to fund from the capital markets perspective. It's much easier to go to the private investors in the private sector looking for funding when you know the solution you're trying to solve, because if you can prove it to investors, you can usually raise the capital that's needed to prove it to the government.
And I think the key, however, is that this technology could have been one of the, and that's up to the selection process at TSA, but it could have been part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yes, absolutely. But I am biased about that.
I understand. Mr. Boyston, you mentioned that you had difficulty in understanding what kind of technology would be required of your constituents, the companies that you represent. What was your encounter with TSA, and do you have a private sector response as to why TSA has not been able to verify 50%?
Well, I believe part of it is in the timing issue. Having been on the other side of it as a carrier, the carriers all report on a day-to-day basis within their own system during the month of February and collect data. Some carriers have that data automated, and some receive a written document, whether it's an email or such from every single location, and then it takes a few days to accumulate those numbers. Those are sent, I believe, to TSA, and they're in the process of trying to, I guess, organize those numbers.
But do your membership, have they developed the kind of equipment that they'd like to use? Have they submitted it in? Do they know what TSA expects of them? What is your issue? What is keeping your constituents from complying or helping to comply?
Well, many of ours are in compliance with the 50%. I believe we are all in compliance.
Okay, if you are, would you provide us with that list of those who are in compliance of up to 50%?
I believe I can acquire that from
Right.
our membership.
So do you have equipment? Has it been certified? Are people using their own equipment that they've been using in the past? Or
I think it's a variety. A number of our members are airlines that are also members of ATA. Having been on that side of it, we've had acquired equipment some time ago, generally trace detection equipment. I know one carrier that I'm very close to had met the 50% months and months ago. It's there. It's very, very feasible if you focus and commit yourself to do it.
So what would help you get better than where you are today?
As it's been mentioned before, it's that cargo that is very difficult to measure and to monitor in today's environment, the containers. Now, TSA in the past has tried to, find some technology and frankly spend a lot of money on fast pulse neutron devices, type of thing that sits in Houston today, gathering dust, without ever going through that step of developing something for the industry without any input back from the industry. They spent I understand, some $6 million on a device that has never worked, and this output would have been 6 containers an hour, which is totally almost useless.
Is this designed by the industry, or this was given to you by TSA?
This is TSA.
And so it has never worked?
It has never.
So these are some of the obstacles: getting the right technology,
Getting the right technology.
getting it certified by TSA.
Yes, and working with the industry to say, what do you want, and working together.
So you'll know what to purchase or move in what direction.
We believe in partnership. We have volunteered for a number of pilot projects, whether it's on technology or whether it's on software. Over the years, we are the first to say, try us. We'll try. We'll work with anybody. But frankly, I think, as Mr. Johnson's indicated, the effort, the focus was not on cargo from the technology standpoint. It just wasn't there. And fortunately, we had the dogs, which, as Mr. May indicated, I've been a dog advocate for years. They're wonderful.
But you don't have enough.
But they don't have enough, and they have a tough union. You can only work them 30 minutes. You got to scratch them behind the ears and feed them. And there aren't enough of them.
I've seen that happen. Thank you, Mr. Boys. And let me just quickly, Mr. May, it's just a quick question. I thank you for testifying. I noticed that again, your membership is not here, but you are here representing them. What is the greatest difficulty for airlines to be part of the compliance of 100%, 50% now in February 2009, and then 2010? Compliance with cargo inspection.
We are in compliance for the 50%. We were by the deadline in February. I think the whole issue there is making sure that TSA has the forms from us that they can aggregate and then report back to you and others to prove that point. But I have no doubt in my mind that we're at 50% right now. Some of our carriers...
And so you'd be willing to give us a list of the airlines that represent that they're at 50%?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
We're happy. It's the ATA membership. I'm happy to give it to you. And by definition, some of our carriers are at 100% because they're exclusive wide-body carriers. Southwest Airlines is a good example from your home state. So the real challenge going forward, as I said in my oral, number one, we now have to tackle wide bodies. Wide bodies take palletized loads. Palletized loads are difficult to trace because of their size. So you got to break them down unless that screening is done upstream. And that's where our friends from the freight forwarder community come in, and they have to be certified, they have to have the technology, and so the real challenge, it's a 25-75 formula right now, just to put it in perspective. 25% of cargo goes on narrow bodies, 75% goes on wide bodies. So the hurdle, has just jumped up a few feet, and that becomes the real challenge. We don't have enough dogs. We don't have any wide portal technology. We need to get more people certified upstream, and those are and that's expensive, and there needs to be some accommodation for those folks buying that technology upstream. So those are the challenges.
Well, you laid out the top of the mountain for us. We thank you for your testimony. Mr. Dent is recognized for his questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following up, I guess, with Mr. May, as you know, that we have this 100% goal here.
Right.
Do you think we can meet that 100% goal, given the issues you just outlined with the wide-bodied planes and other issues, too, in terms of how we're going to get foreign governments to collaborate with us as it relates to the inbound and outgoing foreign cargo? I understand how we can get this up to 85% and perhaps, but how do you get to 100%? Do you think we can actually get to 100% realistically?
I don't think you can get to 100% as many would define it, which is 100% of every piece of cargo carrying on every commercial passenger aircraft, because some of that cargo is coming in from overseas, and it may not be screened to the same levels of technology that you demand here. I can tell you that we're going to make every effort for all domestic and outbound to comply with the law when it's time for it to be 100%. We're going to work our tails off to make sure that happens. And assuming that we have a good partnership with TSA, assuming that they get the funding for additional canine teams, assuming that Mr. Johnson and his competitors continue to work on wide portal screening technology that can be efficient, effective, quick. It can't be 6 pallets an hour, as Jack points out. We got to have something that really moves, and we've got a good upstream program. I think making 100% for domestic and outbound is very doable. If you want to be pure and have an absolute 100% of everything, then I think it's going to be a challenge because of the problems working out internationally.
Thank you. And I'll follow up with Mr. Freed, if I could. I'd be happy to hear you address that same issue, but also I wanted to make a comment, too, that in your comments regarding the future of air cargo screening were of real interest to me. TSA, as you know, must balance its security missions with the need to ensure the efficient flow of commerce. How do you think TSA could better manage its resources to ensure it addresses the highest risks to air cargo while not impeding the safe flow low-risk cargo.
Well, I think that it's important not to abandon this targeted risk-based approach. I mean, I know we're screening every single piece of cargo, but I think that the agency needs to be mindful of making sure that specific risks are addressed in the screening of cargo itself. And I think that if we continue to use that approach going forward, the agency will be effective. I also think this is as Mr. May has said, this is a question of resources, and TSA needs as many resources as possible to continue to expand the CCSP program. And so it's a question of finances.
I guess my next question to you, Mr. Freed, is this. How are freight forwarding employees vetted and investigated to ensure that they are trustworthy employees?
Currently, the TSA has a security threat assessment program that is instituted on anyone in the air cargo and I believe airline industry as well.
Are your facilities currently regulated with respect to facility security minimum standards, and would those in the CCSP be regulated by by TSA?
Yes and yes. The TSA is a constant visitor to all our facilities, and of course, all certified cargo screening program participants are in fact vetted, validated, and then subsequently audited by TSA.
Okay, thank you. And to Mr. Johnson, your frustrations with TSA's qualified product list are heard loud and clear. Navigating any bureaucracy, as you know, is difficult, but there are a few more difficult, perhaps, than at the Department of Homeland Security. So it must have been particularly challenging for you as a smaller business. When you first sought to enter the qualified product list program with TSA, how did you know where to look?
Actually, I had met Mr. Kelly at an industry conference and asked him the best way to start, and he referred me to someone on his staff, and that's how we started.
That's interesting. Is there any website or any form or any handout that explained you the process in easy-to-understand formats, or was this all word of mouth, like through Mr. Kelly?
There probably is a website or a place, but I saw the guy at the top at 10 feet away from me, so I went there.
What was it that that works? What was it that finally enabled you to break through the ceiling? I guess it was just that, going through Mr. Kelly. Is that?
I think what really changed things is we had been talking to the science group at the TSA, and the way we explained our technology didn't make sense to them. And the challenge we had as a small business is the information they were asking us and the things they wanted us to deploy to them were the core of our technology. And if I told them that, now it's a matter of public record. We could interfere with my patent ability. And so we had this catch-22 of if we tell you how it works, you'll get excited about it, but what's to say it's not now a matter of public record or somebody else doesn't get the same technology. So we took a chance very recently and just said, this is how it works, this is why it works. And we got everybody to start nodding their heads saying, okay, this actually looks like it could work. What we didn't know is that someone had told a very similar story. And I think that's been the challenge, is TSA's heard it 100 times from 100 people saying we could do it, and it never really comes out. They build the passive neutron system or do something else. And going back to the point, we tried to come up with a business solution first. What is the process as it sits today? And how do we add the screening process to it without interfering with the workflow? And since all we focus on is cargo, we spend all our time in warehouses, we heard it from the ground up. So it made it a lot easier for us. We just need the TSA to validate the technology.
By the way, congratulations on your additional hires. I know that's got to be pretty tough in these times, but just a real quick question. How many employees does your company currently have?
33.
33. Okay, thank you. I'll yield back my time.
Thank the gentleman for his questions. Now I'm pleased to yield 5 minutes for questioning to the full committee chairman, Mr. Thompson, Mississippi. Thank you, Mr. Dent.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and I appreciate the honesty of the witnesses. I want to briefly paint a picture before I offer my question to the panel. One of the challenges we have is to try to protect the good people of America. And Congress has tried to say, given the vulnerability that exists in this space we're talking about today, that we have to do something about it. Whether or not the 100% target we set is valid, we have to have some idea of what's coming to our shores. We have to have some idea what's traveling on passenger planes. And we believe and hope that nothing bad will happen. But the problem is, if we don't do our duties and something bad happens, shame on us. And so to that end, we're trying to get us to a point where we can, with a reasonable assurance, give the traveling public and others confidence that our systems work. Now, the systems might be dogs, it might be men, might be technology, but aggregate that and we have a system that's 100%. And so if the challenge for industry is, well, if you give 100%, we can't get cargo to our markets fast enough and that delay costs money, sure. But if we create a process that provides all the assurances and get goods to market in that period of time, then I think we all succeed. And so to that end, Congress tried to set these timetables. Granted, if we have to push them back, so be it. But our goal still has to be the 100%. And to the extent that we can accomplish that within a period of time, we have to do it. So I guess my issue for you, Mr. Johnson, is your solution that you've offered is a different approach to what we're talking about getting us there. What makes yours different from X-ray?
Well, from a pure technology perspective, we don't use any radiation, so it's a safe working environment. We actually use a microwave, so we don't require any shielding, and it doesn't require, it's not heavy, it can be deployed very easily. And secondarily, I think the biggest difference is we're trying to do it in the standard flow of commerce in the process. So our technology is deployed at the scale or on the floor where the cargo is already naturally being stopped to be weighed or measured, and that's where we try to do the screening. So from a technology perspective, we're safer, in my opinion. And then secondarily, we're automatically inserted in the process, so it's not an extra step, it's not another place you have to go or another part. And we make it so that you don't have to check an image and say, is this image something suspicious? It's a simple red light, green light approach. You put the cargo on the scale, it takes the weight, our system takes the measurements, it takes a digital picture, and it screens the cargo in seconds all in one step.
Mr. Boysen, you heard the panel of witnesses before, especially our TSA representative. Given that testimony and what your experience has been with TSA, do you have an idea whether they are moving on the front of approving technology at a pace where it does not impede commerce, or the 100% mandate coupled with the ebb and flow of technology might be a problem based on your observation?
Well, my current observations are limited to Mr. Johnson, and I've known his technology for some time, but without a doubt there seems to be, the pace is picking up. There seems to be greater attention to it. I am concerned that, some 5 years ago, I was involved with another conference that was involved with a lot of very smart people at Sandia Labs and Livermore Labs, et cetera, talking about technology, and that it was just 5 years away, and that was 5 years ago. And a lot of it, we have not heard anything promising that coming out of those sources again. So I think it is one thing to say we need technology. It's another to actually find it. How can you get out of the lab? How do you make it functional into a pretty harsh environment?
Mr. Freed, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, TSA tells us that that the technology for screening pallets and containers with multiple commodities is a few years away. And while we hear some tales of promising machines over in Europe, they say that the false alarm rates, the false positive rates as they refer to, are too high to be accepted by TSA. So, you know, we do our best to encourage the agency to look at as many different technologies out there as possible, including, of course, Mr. Johnson's. And, you know, our opinion is they just can't roll it out fast enough. But, you know, of course, it has to meet TSA standards.
Yeah. And I guess, Madam Chair, I could not get a time frame from TSA on any of what we're talking about. And I think from a business perspective, if I want to do business in this space, I'd like to have some idea of how long we're talking about to either say yea or nay. But I don't really want to just be drawn out over a period of time, because time is money. Right. And if I'm doing research and development, that's a challenge. Mr. May, I agree with you. Dogs, canines clearly, at this point is the immediate issue for us to have to do this. But if we know that the notion of having dogs in enough quantity to get things done is almost impossible, then I think we have to look to technology. And if we can assure, you know, your membership that should this technology come forth and would not impede commerce, do you see your membership being supportive of that effort?
Mr. Chairman, if I understand your question correctly, I'll give you an answer. We are all in favor of new technology. We just want it to be, we want it to work. That is to say, it's got to meet the TSA standards, it's got to have low false positives and so forth. It has to do what it's proposed, it is purported to do. Number two, has to be quick and efficient. And number three, there has to be a discussion about cost benefit. Who's paying for this equipment? Who's going to run it? Where's it going to be? And that sort of thing. But nobody is opposed to new technology. The problem is, I understand you and I have had the conversation about how long it takes to train dog teams. Unfortunately, it seems to me like technology has taken a whole lot longer than that.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And I don't think we got the answer from the department today that we're looking for, because we are trying to encourage them to move along and get it done.
Right.
And it just appears that until recently, the effort and energy to make that happen was not taking place. So again, we're going to have to get there. As a member of Congress, somebody who chairs this committee, I would not want something to happen that can be put at the door of an imperfect screening system as to the reason it occurred. And if that happens, then we all agree that if you think the AIG furor over bonuses is something, you can imagine what the public furor over something happening with this would be. So we're all prepared to work together to try to come up with a solution. I just want to let you know that the timetable is an issue, and we'll have to continue to pursue it.
We fully concur with you, Mr. Chairman. I would just reiterate that the CCSP program is going to become a major component of our success in reaching 100%, especially with wide-body palletized loads. And so we need to make sure that they've got the resources to get going, too.
Well, I asked that resource question at the,
you bet.
At the first panel. I want to make sure that if the department needs additional money, we can give it to them. Whatever it is to get us to where we need to be, we're prepared to make it happen.
Terrific.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The chair will return shortly. I will yield myself 5 minutes. This morning, we were called to votes, and so I was not able to get in depth with those who were on the first panel. But Mr. Johnson, one of the issues I raised this morning was the GAO report, which said that screening cannot be done to crates 10 feet and larger. And I am interested in and concerned about what we do to that, and what do you foresee in terms of technology, emerging technologies that would allow that to happen?
I think for us in particular, we see a lot more cargo on a pallet, on a 48 by 40 inch wooden pallet, than we do necessarily in the what we would call a cookie sheet, the 10 foot by 10 foot. That cargo goes on a lot of all cargo carriers who aren't technically part of this regulation. I think if we could screen at the palletized level along with the CCSP, we could definitely solve the 100% screening solution.
Why can't we?
Right now, the technology that would take to, the power you need to get through that dense of cargo is not safe for humans. It's just very difficult to stand by it. The technology we're trying to deploy, and there's other people out there trying to deploy solutions that require low power, that have great penetration to tell you if that pallet is safe or not at a piece level. You have 20 pieces on the pallet. Each one of those pieces are safe and therefore can be put on the plane. That's the solution we're out trying to solve without stopping the flow of commerce and during the natural process of accepting the cargo.
Okay, you know, if I have a business in my district, Gates Barbecue, they want to ship slabs of short ends or you know, some beef sandwiches, frozen beef sandwiches. They're small business. Is the cost prohibitive for small businesses? Mr. Wright.
To participate in the Certified Cargo Screening Program?
Yes,
No.
yes.
In that case, absolutely not. Most of the businesses would not have to buy technology because they're doing their own packing of their boxes. The people would have to be certified. There'd be security threat assessed by the TSA. They'd have to provide a sterile area for preparation for packing. But I would tell you, generally speaking, no.
So they could do that in their own little plant?
Absolutely.
And the cost would be minimal? I mean,
minimal cost. They have to just make sure that they're perimeter and they have controlled access to their environment. But generally speaking, I would say no.
So if we said that right now in the middle of this reinvestment and recovery, I'm the only one saying it. We failed to get everybody to say that. Everybody wants to say stimulus, but it's Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And one of the big concerns we have, of course, in this bill that we approved is how do we help small businesses? And so one of the issues that small businesses are concerned about is, you know, in order for them to expand, they're going to have to expand their markets, and that means, you know, transatlantic business deals. And my concern was, and I think you've answered the question, that they are not going to be put through any expense that they could not bear.
Right, the actual shippers, the people giving us the boxes.
Yes.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. One final question, and maybe this is not the panel. I let them escape because the bail saved them, but this morning, because I wanted to know, you know, how we are doing business with small and minority businesses. And I'm pleased, Mr. Johnson, to see you here. But I mean, that was a question I wanted to raise with them. But I mean, your presence, I guess, would suggest that there's at least some level of openness and sensitivity. And you didn't have any unusual challenges other than the challenges that people normally have as a business person.
Yeah, I would agree that it's more defined by the bureaucracy and the process. I didn't think that I was treated any different or slighted because we were a small business. The challenge was just getting in front of them and telling our story. And since then, it's gone really fast. I would say the TSA is out to find a solution. They want to solve the problem just as bad as we want to give one to the industry. And I don't think they care if it's small, large, or medium, as long as it makes sense for the industry and it can hit the 100% screening mark.
You know, it sounds like the coach from Alabama, Bear Bryant, said he didn't want black players until Southern Cal had a running back who named Bam Marsh, ran about 3 million yards on him. And then he said, you know, I don't have any problems with having those, I don't want to use the word he used, but having those on my team. So I guess, you know, if you have something to offer, people want to get it. One of the other questions that I wanted to ask, the incident of the chair will be back shortly. Do you think that the nationwide, region to region, TSA is focusing in the right places and the right points in the supply chain to meet the 100% screening mandate, congressional mandate?
I would say yes. I mean, the Certified Cargo Screening Program is a smart solution. Spread the security task into the supply chain it's a smart way to make sure that we reach this mandate in the absence of certified and technology, and get the shippers involved. Make sure that TSA is well funded so that it has adequate personnel on hand to actually carry out the vetting and the audit function over these shippers. And I think that we will achieve this mandate without hesitation.
Do all of you think that we're going to meet the congressional mandate? Just, if you just go down from Mr. Johnson all the way down to Mr. May.
I would qualify it the same way Mr. May did. I would say domestic and outbound, absolutely, but I spent enough time internationally, and the harmonization challenge you have is that most and many countries believe that their security standard is superior to the TSA's, so when the TSA is trying to enforce upon them a standard that they believe they're superior to, it's very difficult to call a harmonization.
But have we looked at any international any other or international systems? I mean, for example, El Al is at least spoken of as the superior system on the planet. Have we had any contact with or involvement with El Al? Yes,
Yeah,
Mr. Fry.
I spent a week over in Tel Aviv back in May, and I could tell you that from what my experience was with the Israelis is that cargo is a conundrum to them as well. And one of the solutions they have is to hold cargo for 2 days prior to shipment. Mr. Boysen's airline had service in and out of Tel Aviv, so he could probably tell his personal experiences. But
no, I've had personal experiences. You can't take you know, a beef sandwich on El Al.
Right. As a passenger, if you plan on committing a malicious act, obviously that's not the place to do it. But you know, cargo has its challenges.
Yes. Madam Chair.
Thank you. We call this a cooperative spirit, and I thank Mr. Cleaver from Missouri. He has come to be a valued member of this committee, and I look forward to us working to solve these problems. Let me thank the members of this panel, and I think you have enlightened us as to the private sector's involvement, but also the concerns that you've expressed. I do want to add to the record, to reinforce its addition to the record, October 30th, 2008 letter from the Transportation Security Administration to Chairman Thompson and the committee that defines transportation as to what the transportation system means, what commencement means, which I think is going to be important to future legislation. Ask unanimous consent to submit into record. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Let me just yield myself just a minute, just to ask Mr. Johnson, what is your latest encounter? And I ask this generically for small businesses, but what is your latest encounter with TSA?
Actually, we spoke this morning with the TSL about setting a date to start the screening process.
Okay. Let me just say this broadly I've asked Mr. I think Kelly to provide us with a list, maybe extensive, of small businesses similarly situated and the status of the technology that they may be offering. Let me say on behalf of the committee, we hope that that meeting that you're having, as well as others who are in line to answer the question of Mr. Boysen and Mr. Freed, Mr. May on technology, moves quickly. I'm also going to write a letter to TSA to ask for them to give us their process of moving technology and assessing that technology. I do think there is a gaping hole of consciousness between the urgency that Congress puts into legislation like the 9/11 legislation, giving specific dates of 2009 and 2010, and there is a disconnect between the kind of technology that needs to be in place for the job to get done. Mr. Boysen, on behalf of your constituents, we're going to ask for some understanding of the process of certification and providing information to your constituents to be able to now have you assess which technology you can use and the determination of whether or not the equipment that some of your clients, customers, constituents are using is adequate. Also, I had to rush away because I gave testimony to the Budget Committee. I will be revising my statement to include issues regarding transit and air cargo and asking for funding that will answer some of the concerns about staffing and some of the concerns about funding as it relates to the full screening of cargo by 2010, and certainly to maintain the 50% that we have at this point. I think I asked Mr. Boysen to give me a list of his constituents in terms of their compliance or representing that they're at 50 or 100%, and I'd like you to designate who's at what. Mr. May, likewise, I'd like you to do so as well. And I'd like to ask my staff director, Mr. Beelen, that we have a briefing with airlines. We understand their hesitancy for being at a hearing, but we hope that we will have full attendance at a briefing so that we can be informed and be working effectively on this issue. We may call upon those of you who are here again, and with that, I believe I have come to a conclusion. I think I will just simply say, no, we have not met the test, and the test is to secure America. And frankly, I hope that this hearing will set the wake-up call for us to do so. I thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittee may have additional questions for the witnesses, and we ask that you respond to them expeditiously in writing. In addition, I think this hearing has generated what I believe the necessity for further legislation on this matter to clarify, but also instructions to the industry and to TSA. We look forward to introducing that legislation. Hearing no further business, the subcommittee stands adjourned.